Have a seat.
Very close to everybody. Is that okay?
That's fine. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to East Meets West, restarting travel and the lessons learned along the way. Thank you so much for coming to this event. As many destinations in the West have begun to open their borders and restart international travel, only a few in the Asia-Pacific region have begun to welcome visitors. In fact, Thailand have just made an announcement, haven't they? Today, we'll examine the Asia-Pacific region's plan for reopening borders and restarting travel. And with my distinguished panel, we'll also look into new travel behavior and what travelers are seeking in a post-COVID-19 world. So, for example, the Western view of Asia is still confused as a result of the pandemic and the current, at times, difficult border policy challenges. Some markets are still pursuing a COVID-0 strategy, others are signaling openings. So what is critical to the successful reopening of Asia-Pacific and engaging interest from Western travelers? How is the region readying itself to welcoming travelers? And how have consumer travel behaviors and interests changed? I'd say one thing right now, by the way, that this is being live streamed, so hello to everybody who's watching at home or in the office or wherever around the world. It'll also be replayed next Monday, I think Monday or Tuesday, so look out for that if you want to come back to this. Let me introduce you to my wonderful panel, who each bring brilliant perspective to this subject and this talk. Look, first of all, if you don't mind, by the way, I'll give you very potted introductions because we want to get on with the whole thing. First of all, can I welcome Liz Ortega, the recently appointed CEO of PATA, and the first woman and the first Asian, is that, which is very interesting, to be CEO. Liz, her career spans several industries: travel, lifestyle, technology, financial services, and pharmaceuticals. And in her personal life, she has been a continual advocate for poverty eradication programs and education initiatives across the region. Alan Elliott Mershon is a partner, International Insights at Myriad. He began his career in academia, and then he moved into the travel sphere. He created Myriad, specializing exclusively in international travel marketing with private clients and governments. In 2016, Myriad became part of the MMGY global portfolio of companies. Dr. Abdullah Masoom is Minister of Tourism for the Republic of the Maldives. He has been the Minister for the Republic since August 2020. He was also the General Manager of Sun Island Resort. So he knows his business and the spa for 4 years from 2013. And he was High Commissioner to Singapore and non-resident High Commissioner to New Zealand and Australia, I believe. Kimali Fernando is Chairperson of Sri Lanka Tourism. She heads the government's 4 main tourism entities, and this is the first time that one chairperson was appointed to all 4 boards. She's also the first woman in the role. She's been a member of the Presidential Task Force for the Prevention of COVID-19 since 2020. So welcome to my brilliant panel. Liz, I want to start with you to perhaps set the scene. Give us some context. So what is the destination readiness across Asia-Pacific in terms of opening and what their policies are? If you could just give us an outline.
Sure. And I'll say that I started in this role in the beginning of June. And since then, when I've joined the tourism ministry discussions, it's been incredible because the focus on health and safety has been very strong. You know, so it gets to the point where you wonder if you're sitting in a health ministry discussion or a tourism ministry discussion. So there's a really high focus on that. Strong diligence, you know, even to the extent in some markets where, you know, the 3 priorities, it may be a 3-tiered priority. First is to vaccinate the health workers. Second, essential workers, like groceries and transport. And third, you know, would be the tourism-facing staff. And that demonstrates how important the industry is to the jobs and to the economies across Asia Pacific. You know, there's a statistic that says that 55% of the travel and tourism employees are in Asia Pacific. So the important thing to know, and I straddle East and West. My home country is the U.S. You know, I'm certainly comfortable in all the different regions, and PATA's mission is responsible development of travel and tourism to, from, and within Asia Pacific. And so I can see that, you know, very much Asia is quiet right now, but it's because, you know, they're diligently working at the health and safety protocols for the incoming travelers, for the frontliners that are facing the tourists, and also for the local communities. And so, you know, that's an important message to send to the world, that it is really, you know, diligently being prepared. And we're at an exciting brink of reopening. Now, in addition to that, you know, on Monday, for example, Thailand announced you know, a new marketing campaign. And it's not just about the health and safety protocols, but it's also about new services and new offerings. You know, the post-pandemic travel consumer has different needs. All of us have a greater appreciation for wellness. There will be slower travel, multi-purpose travel, an interest in, you know, exploring new ecosystems and less congested places, rural tourism. So there is a silver lining to all of this, and I have to say, you know, there's a lot of there are a lot of opportunities to appreciate this. So I would consider, you know, Asia Pacific would offer the antidote to the ills that came and hit us through the pandemic, and it's really at the brink of an exciting reopening.
Can you just take me through, I mean, we have two individual cases, examples here of countries in the PATA region who have pursued their own path. But just tell me what is the general picture in terms of countries that are open for business and travel?
I would say it's very staged. For example, you know, some of the markets that are, you know, ready to go, Sri Lanka, and Kamarli will share more of that. Maldives has been a great success story. The Pacific Islands, you know, they got fully vaccinated right away. So they're open, and multiple countries have created safe destinations within their markets. You know, similar to a Phuket sandbox, there are multiple sandboxes that have opened around the region, and as you've seen in the last 2 weeks, there are a lot of border relaxations that have occurred. I'm based in Singapore, and the government has been very diligent about you know, control of the cases and the vaccination deployment, and they've opened up a raft of what we'd call green lanes or VTLs with multiple countries. And so, you know, announcements are coming daily, every other day. So it's something to keep posted on.
Two crucial source markets, even within the PATA region, are China, I believe, and India. Now, China in particular, what's going on with China?
So China, first of all, their domestic market has really heated up. And what's exciting about that is, you know, we do partnerships with some of the provinces and the government, and we've hosted just in the past month 2 rural tourism conferences, and that market has grown 300%. And that's not just good for their domestic tourism, but it is, you know, it's a general wave across the region around this interest in more authentic, more local, more natural experiences. And so, you know, they will be, you know, we can anticipate them opening up perhaps in stages, you know, through, you know, the coming 12 months. And certainly that is a huge force. You know, PATA was formed on the concept of introducing Asia-Pacific destinations to the West. But as you know, in the last 2 decades, Asia-Pacific is the engine for growth for the industry. And the sleeping giant will be waking up soon.
Okay, very good. I'm going to come back to you soon to talk about vaccines and vaccine iniquity. I think it's a really important topic to talk about. Excuse me. Let's just deal with one of these examples then. Sri Lanka.
Sure.
Tell me, what has been going on and why has Sri Lanka, do you think, actually survived quite well through this crisis?
Yes, I think the reason was immediate action. So when we had the first COVID death in Sri Lanka, which was last year March, that very same day the COVID task force was set up by our president. And I'm also part of it. And it was a cross-functional team. And that very day, the decision was made to go for lockdown. And we had a serious lockdown, took immediate action, cross-functional team, and communication was important. We have a good healthcare system, so that was taken care of. being an island, we realized we were watching the world. And some countries said we will have herd immunity, some countries said we are going to. So we didn't know. So what we did was, the moment we could apply for the vaccinations, we went for it. So that's probably what happened. And we came up with a proposal very early on, while everyone was closed. Europe was in fair amount of trouble last year, when Asia really wasn't. And then Asia had trouble afterwards. So what we did was, in June last year, we got into action. We were one of the first countries in the region, I believe, who got the World Travel and Tourism Safe Travel Stamp as well. We set a program in place of safe and secure hotels. All staff were trained, every single staff physically trained, hotels physically audited by KPMG and Ernst & Young, drivers, tour guides, everyone was trained from June last year, when the world was closed, if you like, till December. And thereafter only be open. I think our part of the world, we are quite used to dengue and all these infections and, polio and whatever. So I think our healthcare system is quite used to. While I think in Europe and the Western world, it's more difficult, perhaps. So we were able to vaccinate and move on. And today we have 71.2% of the whole of Sri Lanka population double vaccinated.
Which is
71.2.
Which is pretty remarkable, yeah.
So,
and also in terms of people who can come into the country, they don't have to be vaccinated. Is that right? There's a system for them.
Absolutely.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're fully vaccinated, it's travel like in 2019, pre-COVID, if you're fully vaccinated. There's no protocol. You basically do a PCR test before you arrive, before you board. That's it. You don't do any PCR tests or any such thing. There's no restriction. So Sri Lanka is completely open for you. If you're not vaccinated, also we welcome you. But there you stay in the bio-bubble concept, approved hotels all over the island. You can use all the facilities of the hotel because the staff are very well trained. And you know something, the tourism industry, they are used to health and safety. That's part of the whole training of health and safety, right? The kitchens, pre-COVID too. Cleaning, disinfecting things, keeping the kitchen clean, health and safety requirements. Tourism industry actually is quite capable and they are doing it. This was only the next step, right? So after that is done, so in the bio-bubble concept, they can use the pool and everything. They can also go to different sites in the island, 22 sites, but particular time. You cannot mix with the community. So they go through the island, but not mixing. But if most people who are visiting us, 80%, 90% are vaccinated. So frankly, it's like visiting us in 2019.
Okay.
No protocol.
I will come back to you as well and find out more about the kind of offers you've got, the kind of tourism activities that you are developing, and where the future looks. Let me turn to you, Minister from the Maldives. Now, you really were quite exceptional in your experience, weren't you? Because I believe you've had 90% tourism levels compared to 2019 all throughout the pandemic. How did you manage that?
Yeah, I think let's first go back about 1.5 years back when the whole world was panicking. We panicked too. And we had to close the border. We closed the border. But what happens when you close the border of a country that really, really depends on tourism? Tourism contributes 45% to the GDP directly and indirectly, about 70%. So just after closing, we realized that we had to open. So we had an approach where everyone was engaged. President, he himself, taking the helm of the whole thing. And as Liz mentioned, health people were they had the final say anyway. So we decided to open the borders with very clear-cut protocols, very simple, clear-cut protocols. We wanted to ensure that we manage tourism with the crisis. We ensured safety for tourists, staff, and the general public, and start opening. The Maldives product itself was a blessing. And we have got this small islands, one resort. Everyone is very aware of the bubbles we are talking about. So the Maldives had the product bubbles. Each island is a hotel itself, and in the hotels also, it is not rooms in a tower or something like scattered rooms, residences, chalets. So that's one component of our product. We were able to manage that very well with the standard health protocols for COVID. And of course, there is safari sector, that is liveaboat boats. Again, it is one unit of accommodation itself. People can charter, that goes on. There's another story in the inhabited islands where we had small hotels and guest houses. So we opened up in phases. First, we had the islands opened, and we made sure we were very, very transparent. I don't think that there's any country in the world that gave as much information about the COVID with all the detailed statistics as Maldives did. And we had a very comprehensive isolation system when something happens. Government facility was there, medical facility was there, tourist facility was there. We introduced our own insurance scheme that covered COVID, Maldives insurance scheme, because that was one hindrance. And also we opened border miles, Maldives border miles, one of its loyalty programs, because Maldives normally, we are very much reliant on repeat guests, and they come and give the picture. So what happened was when we opened, slowly we start getting the guests, and tourists started showing the Maldives to the world. Look here, I'm in the Maldives, no mask, we are doing okay. And that was a very strong message. Our message was there, loud and clear. Private sector message was there, loud and clear, but the tourist message was louder, very loud.
However, there's one crucial aspect here, which is the kind of tourists you are getting still, are a lot of them anyway, are ultra high net worth individuals.
Very true. Initially, because many of the airlines were not flying because they weren't getting the critical volume, and there are so many borders were closed. So we had a lot of private jets who pulled up resources and had a private jet, or just the private jets, the rich people. And those people who were there, they decided to stay longer. But on July 15th, we opened our borders, and every day we started increasing the numbers, and we reviewed always, we review upwards our targets. 2021, we initially targeted for 750,000. Later, we revised for 1 million. But now, already we have reached 1 million on 29th of this month, and now we are targeting 1.3 million. It has been a very positive growth, and most of our resorts, especially upmarket resorts, they had their best ever December in 2020 and in 2021, January, February, March, best ever year. But still, that impacted everybody. Some employees were laid off, some salary restructuring happened. Those things are slowly coming back. We hope that before the end of the year, next year we are celebrating our Golden Jubilee, tourism's 50th anniversary. We hope that when we welcome our Golden Jubilee, everything will be really back as it is. Tourist numbers are back to 2019, as you mentioned. So I think Maldives is back, and thanks for the travel trade, thanks for all the partners, thanks for everybody who has contributed to the success story of Maldives.
Okay, again, I will come back to you because there are, in a sense, ramifications of that and what that means to your population and the people who work there. And we'll come back to that issue. I want to turn, because obviously this whole session is East meets West. Now, what is the issue? What is the current situation, Liz, before I turn to Al, with Western travellers to the region?
I think that, it's, of course, we're the latest region to open up. For some of the reasons that I mentioned. There's been such a diligence in terms of vaccines deployment and health and safety protocols, and I think that now is the time to be communicating. Destination marketing is much more complex than it was 2-3 years ago. Now there's so much more information and up-to-date information that needs to be provided to governments. To create that bilateral trust between the source and the destination market, as well as the enterprises and the consumers. And so I think this is an important period for us, as PATA and other entities, to really support the destinations in communicating that to the world.
So, Alan, let's look at the Western view of travel to Asia today. You've done research on this. You know what, particularly in the States, what people's views are. enlighten us.
I wish I could come out and give outstanding news that everybody's ready to get on the plane and they want to go to Asia tomorrow, but that would be wrong of me. I think part of the challenge is, I'll speak first to the U.S. The Americans, for the better part of most Americans, are what I would call geographically challenged. And there's Asia, and it's one big group, especially when we talk about PATA. Pacific Asia is one big area. For the most part, those people aren't traveling. It's going to be the sophisticated people who understand this, and they understand the very different regions of Asia. Asia has been out of mind, and it has been out of sight. One of my concerns is that a lot of the Asian destinations have said, when we open, we will market. As if there's an expectation, like a retail store, once we open the doors, everyone will see and come in. That's not going to happen. It will take a while for people to come back, just because they've started to book other trips. They've done, as Liz said, more domestic travel. There's been more marketing on domestic travel. And there will be a reluctance because they haven't heard anything or very little. Some destinations, Japan, for example, has done a good job of marketing Japan without selling Japan. Of just going out to the market and saying, here's what we're doing in Japan. These are the protocols that we're doing. Not even travel related, because everybody knows this is a health issue first, a business issue, a travel industry issue. So I think they've looked at that. I mean, Americans, I think, will have interest, but they're going to be reluctant. I mean, one of the trends we see now, because of all the changes in cancellation fees being removed, we have a phenomenon now called trip stacking, which people are booking maybe a trip to Brazil, a trip to London, and hopefully a trip to Malaysia. And they're waiting until a month or a few weeks before, and then seeing what's the safest place, canceling the 2 trips and going on the 1. My other concern is that the Asian destinations, as we start to see a little bit of those green shoots, as we say, they need to start the marketing now to plant that seed for the Americans and the Europeans to start saying, we need to put this in our agenda, if not for next week, but for next quarter, or at least next year, to get ahead of the game. Otherwise, it'll be 23 until we see the movement back in.
We're going to discuss that as well. Just one thing, just almost going to the most base level, in a sense, in terms of stereotypical views of Asia. I mean, do they still persist? Are there still this kind of weird view that somehow Asia is not a safe place to go, or it's something, or what?
Well, I mean, in our recent study, 16% of Americans had a great interest in going to Asia, in a general term. Now, that might seem very low, but on the other hand, that represents about 48 to 50 million people, which is larger than the population of Korea. So when we look at it from those terms, it's not bad. And those are usually highly educated, household incomes high, et cetera, the market. So in one respect, that makes it a little bit easier to market because you can clearly identify who is your target audience, and you're not wasting your time on 320 million people that are not going to go. So to answer your question, the people who are traveling to Asia are the well-educated. We do think that the trend will be the first ones who will be in Asia, going to Asia, will be the ones who have been to Asia before. And I think that's not just Asia, I think that's globally. You're going to go to a place where you have a comfort level, and you might even push it a little bit. Instead of going to a major city, you might spend more time, like Liz was saying, in the rural areas, more about wellness, not necessarily the city and shopping. And I think a lot of the destinations have realized that and pushed that. I mean, even Singapore, which I think has done a great job of pushing out the idea that Singapore is a country, not just a city. And so that association of it just being concrete is being crushed and saying there's a much more dimension. And it falls in line, ironically, with what we talked about in 2017, 18, 19 about dispersal within a country being an essential part. Now we have the excuse and the interest.
Yeah. Thanks for the moment. Liz, just one thing. In terms of Sri Lanka and the Maldives, what lessons do you think can be learned from the fact that they have been relatively successful?
Oh, I think there's so many lessons, and actually one of the things that we encouraged as PATA was cross-border learnings between destinations. Because, so what I started were these government member-only best practice shares at a more operational and also at a marketing level. And, whether it was Maldives had some great lessons, Sri Lanka, Hawaii, Macau, each destination has its own character and culture, but there's certainly, no one has the perfect solution. So what I found is it's actually very important for the destinations to best practice share, whether it's, consumer marketing or vaccine acceptance or how to stress-free travel journeys, in terms of learnings and best practice shares, it's very important for collaboration to occur across destinations that might have competed in the past.
So in terms, Kamali, of the kind of offer you have now, and perhaps this is part of the answer to the question as well, in terms of what other countries can perhaps learn if they don't already know this, but what kind of things, what kind of projects, what kind of tourism are you developing in Sri Lanka now to bring in the new traveller?
I think post-COVID travelers are looking for space, like you mentioned. They're looking for wellness and well-being. In fact, Sri Lanka was voted top 5 in the world for wellness, to heal the body and soul. So they're looking for food, which Sri Lanka is, our food is known to build immunity. They are looking to get back to nature, really. And also we realized something with COVID, that we are social animals. So they want to connect in a safe way, whether it's going to the paddy field and harvesting the rice, or cutting a gemstone, going to the gem pit and cutting your own gemstone. They want to experience that. So I think we are offering Sri Lanka in a different perspective now, not only sun and sea. Everyone's looking for sun and sea after COVID, I have to say. There's a lot of bookings are sun and sea still. So they're doing that, but they're combining with whale watching, doing little experiences. And a lot of them are not going, as it was mentioned before very clearly, we are seeing that. They're looking for villas, tree houses, camping, trekking, hiking, stuff like that. Getting back to nature. And just one point with regards to the Western world that you mentioned, we look at it a little bit different. America we see differently, and I see Europe differently. Because a European traveler is very different to an American traveler, especially the British traveler. We have a long history with Britain, Sri Lanka. And, a lot of people come, their grandfather was there during the war, or they were a planter, or there's some connection, So the British public have had a long relation. They appreciate our tea, our culture. So they have already started to travel to us.
Right.
First, it's family and friends. Then word of mouth. Then we are getting tours now. December, some hotels are completely full already, bookings from UK. So America, I find you're right. They're a little bit more skeptical about it. And from a Sri Lankan perspective, we never went for mass-scale tourism, so we don't want 30 million or 40 million that some countries have had.
Sure.
We are looking 2.3, 3 million, that kind of.
And in fact, this is a good example of this, isn't there? You've got this phenomenon happening at Ella in terms of millennial travels. And tell me a little bit about that, because that wasn't even something you were pushing, was it, particularly?
Absolutely. Myself, many years ago, hadn't gone to Ella, to be very honest, right? But it's a European traveler, the Millennium Z generation. They went there. They discovered it. They went, the famous picture with the train and that girl, and the boy holding on to that picture has gone viral. They created that. That was on Lonely Planet, and we won some awards and so on. So, the Millennium, the Z generation also we have our eye out for. So we have two groups. One is a post-COVID traveler who's looking for exactly what Sri Lanka has to offer. In a way, we are blessed. So it's just there in our country. 26 national parks, the highest density of waterfalls, all that is there. And the younger generation who also we are really looking out for, because they are looking purely for, they don't want cookie cutter products, they want quirky, the food, and that's super for us.
Yeah.
And they also share content.
Yeah.
Right? So it's authentic content rather than you mention another country that keeps advertising. It's authentic content that goes out.
Yeah.
And we're also having bloggers and influencers who already have come from all over the country. And the digital nomads, they're really good because they live in our country. And lots of them have done their posts and people follow them. So it's better than Sri Lanka Tourism Board going and sort of saying...
And that's an interesting phenomenon, isn't it? I mean, Al, can you see how that can play out in the future?
By all means. I mean, I think one of the trends, which I think goes into the digital nomad space too, is people will go to single destinations and stay longer.
Yep.
It's not I'm going to go to 3 or 4 countries. That's too much work.
Yes.
And then I think also, what we used to call bleisure, it's business and leisure. Now it's workation, whatever we want to call it, that people will say, if we're going to go somewhere, we can go for 2 weeks, and I can still do a bit of work there. So I think we're going to see a complete change in the way people travel, how long they travel, what type of accommodation and everything else, because it's a different mindset that we had before. We play off this idea of think outside the clock. and when you work and how you work and where you work is going to be very, very different. We're talking to some people who were talking about homeschool holidays, where the kids can still go somewhere and still be connected to their schools. So it's a whole different way of looking at things. Even the seasonality, where you wouldn't take your kids out of school. Well, you're not taking them out of school, you're just taking them out of country, but they're still connected to school. So I think a lot of destinations will review the product that they have.
But and also the word of mouth way of marketing, if you like. The fact that it wasn't the Sri Lankan Tourism Board that pushing, for example, Ella. It was word of mouth. It was content sharing. It was all those things. That's going to become more critical.
Yeah, in an ideal world, the trick of throwing an ad out and seeing people come in is never work. No, never will work again. And we all have an old expression in the industry, which is, I know half my advertising's working, I just don't know which half. and I think what we see now, and I just read another study, that if you only use one medium, your effectiveness is about 40%. As soon as you add another medium, it goes up to about 55%. The third or fourth medium is where you start to have the impact. So we heard we're going to have to do some advertising, some social, some word of mouth. Relying on one or saying, I've heard word of mouth has worked, so that's what we're going to do, is not a good recipe for success. It's, as any good Asian dish, it takes a lot of ingredients to make it spicy.
Now, just in terms of the people staying, as I was mentioning, for longer, you have people there staying for 3 months at some point, didn't you?
Very true. I think the travel pattern has really changed in terms of, we have tourists which are usually 30 days, but it goes up to 90 days. But after 90 days, what do? We had a special arrangement with immigration because people just want to stay. With regard to the American tourists, but I think you're absolutely right. I think if they are aware, they travel. In Maldives, there is number 4 market now. Can you imagine? And they have traveled very far. But thanks to the media, thanks to international brands that are in the Maldives, the Americans are more aware of Maldives now. And that is encouraging them to travel to Maldives. And with regard to I think the total messaging, international relations is very, very important. Also international organizations relations. We were very happy to have WHO, because when travel trade or guests say, why are you doing this? We say, well, WHO standard. Then people believe. And also the UNWTO, PATA, and WTTC played a very important role in giving a common message. Diplomatic relations helped us establish travel bubbles. It is important to have a very important market nearby. Like we had India contributing 23% to our total arrivals. China, which had 19% of arrivals in the previous year, still missing. Then again, Russia is our number 2 market. There's a huge market shift. People's behavior of travel is changed, but more or less still they have in their mind what Maldives is. And that's why I think Maldives is able to shine. One thing we noticed was one of the biggest hindrances was the travel restrictions in the source market. You spend X number of dollars, pounds, come to Maldives, and get that beautiful Maldives tan, and you don't want to come back at your end waste that tan without showing it to your friends. So home quarantine was really, or other types of quarantine was really a discouragement for travel. And now I'm happy that almost the whole world is now open.
I want to ask you a couple of things in terms of because of the clientele that you have there can be a lot of them ultra high net worth individuals. Where does that leave? First of all, how do local people benefit from that? Is there leakage? In other words, is the money going to them? Are they sharing in the profits of this?
Yeah, but in the Maldives earlier days, we had this one island, one resort concept, and the income that's related to sub-businesses related to tourism, like fishing, farming, that's helping. But we are now embarking on local tourism. Government wants to take tourism to the people. We have got 200 islands. We are taking tourism to the people, and by doing so, we are doing three things. One is we are preserving the ecosystems and utilizing the ecosystems so that we can help the environment. And also we are helping to save the culture and heritage of the islands. At the meantime, giving a very good business opportunity and also employment opportunity for the youth, for the women, and for the other cultural performers, handicraft people, souvenir makers, everything. So now, from next year, January, we are going to open homestay. That will make Maldives really accessible for everybody. We are saying that at the moment, our product is not configured to the airline seat configuration. There are private jets, business class, private jets, first class, business class, premium economy. We don't have enough economy beds at the moment, but we are going to have it from next year. So Maldives is going to be really accessible, and more locals will benefit from it.
And backpackers too, could they come to the Maldives? Because that's your next generation of traveller.
I think present day, I think backpackers was a 1970s thing. Today there aren't backpackers anymore. There are more tourists who wish to go and understand the story of the countries. And they want to live like a nice traveler, and they are much more aware than previous time. You don't expect the same behavior of the backpackers. I don't think that's the right term to use anymore.
They're independent travellers, then.
Yeah.
But lower budget.
Yeah,
put it that way.
I think that will be a very interesting sector. But Maldives, we will maintain our premium image. We will ensure that one island, one resort concept is safeguarded, because that is our prime image driver. But we will make Maldives more accessible, but we will keep the standard very well. And I think, as you mentioned, the tourism industry has its standards. Always it has had its safety standards.
Okay, Liz. Yes, go on.
I'll just add one thing to that. I think over the years, one of the offerings from Asia has been that accessible luxury. And it was interesting to see that in the Thailand new marketing promotion, one of the photographs they showed was a digital nomad sitting in front of their laptop looking at a rice field, and that being the dream of a global traveler for their workation. Bali had the same offering. There are multiple locations where you can blend that the work and the beauty of the environment together.
I was going to ask you, what is, as I said, these are probably exceptions. They're very good exceptions, but they're exceptions. What is PATA doing to help countries that are not necessarily in the same situation?
We're doing multiple things. When I started in June, I immediately started this 8-point plan to support our destinations and the industry. So part of it, as I mentioned, was the best practice share across destinations. We started an innovation hub. We really, from a period of crisis like this, you can get a lot of opportunity and innovation. So whether it's creating disaster recovery, crisis recovery, or it's great new products. I actually think the travelers that come back to Asia now, they're going to see enhanced products. So for example, 2 weeks ago, we did our first PATA Wellness Conference, because that's going to continue to be a broader and broader industry trend. And so when you come to a destination, the offering won't just be massage and facials in the spa. Now it's, in Asia, you've got a raft of different options that arise out of the heritage and the culture of that nation. So a lot of these global trends in wellness, so you'll have, what you'll see is a whole range of offerings from sound healing to Ayurvedic treatments to, meditation retreats. So I think the offering in that space is just going to broaden. And then, we're doing a number of things, and I think the one thing I would also add is that we are lending our platform and our support to the COVAX effort, because that's so important. Sitting in a wealthy nation, it's easy to forget that really it's only 38% of the world's population that's fully vaccinated right now. And with all this diligence around creating safe zones in Asia Pacific and in Africa, there are a lot of people that still need vaccines. So vaccine equity is a very important thing for all of us to recover. Because the West can't recover by itself. It doesn't work like that, as we've seen. And so it's very important to make sure for the people that want it, they have equal access. And so there's great work being done by UNICEF, working with WHO and Gavi, to basically get these vaccines to the most remote locations in the world. And all of us, as part of the global travel community, we can appreciate that. We've seen the diversity. We've seen, the diversity in needs across the world. So, I would say, I would advocate that the industry get behind that and support the donations that are needed, and, if they need logistics, that effort really needs a push for us to expedite this.
I mean, that's absolutely crucial. In a sense, that's the most important message we can have today, isn't it? Because the world cannot get back to full capacity and travel until everybody, or as many people as possible, are in that situation. Sri Lanka's lucky, 70% is pretty high, isn't it, in terms of vaccination rate? But that isn't true of every region and country in Asia. I want to look at one other aspect of all of this, which is pricing, Al. Yes. Because you are worried, or I don't know whether, but you think that it's going to get more expensive.
Well, I think overall it will get expensive. I think certainly in the West things are getting expensive, and there's certain inflation throughout Europe and the US. I think as people are starting to realize how they treat their staff, they need to up the game, and that will eventually up the price. At the same time, I'm concerned when Asia does open again, there'll be an instinct like there has in the past to discount. And we try to caution people against that completely. Yes, the Europeans will be looking for a good deal. Hopefully the airlines come to the table. But we challenge the destinations to put together a value proposition, not a low-cost proposition. Rather than discounting your hotel, add more to it. Add more attributes. And I think, if anything, out of the attributes of COVID have been collaboration. And so we push, say, a hotel in Bangkok to work with the local tuk-tuk driver, with the local cooking school, and package that all together so all boats rise together. It's still a great value proposition, and that way the length of stay will have a better value proposition and a reason to stay, because there's so many things added into that, rather than discounting the hotels just to get people into the hotels. It's got to be a value proposition and a package.
And if you're advising individual tourist boards or whatever about the best way to go forward and the best way to attract more European and US travel, what would you be saying to them?
Don't be desperate. Don't discount too much. And we're taught in marketing to have a unique selling proposition, to have a USP. That's not enough anymore. Most places have a USP. What we need now is a TSP, which is a timely selling proposition. Not why do I need to come to Bangkok? Why do I need to come to this place? Why do I need to come to this place now? And so that has to change, because we know why we want to go to these places. Why do we want to go now? And so if it's events, if it's certain activities, those are the things that the tourist boards, I think, have to put as a priority. Otherwise, they will remain on someone's bucket list, but they'll be deep in the bucket.
But Asia still has that distinctive thing that no other part of the world has, or the Pacific Asia, I should say. has something unique. I mean, I know USP is not enough, but it's still got something that it's bucket list. It is bucket list. Everybody needs to go to India, wants to go to, should go to India. Everybody should go to China, whatever. You know, that stuff is still there, right?
Oh, it's there. I know why I want to go someplace. It's what's going to make that a priority for me to go now rather than wait. Yes, I want to do the Great Wall of China. Yes, I want to visit your island, especially now that I hear so much about it. My private plane's getting fixed. But why do I want to go now? And I think that's the challenge for the destination. And sometimes it is because we're a quiet destination and you want to come before we get noisy. It could be before the Amazon rainforest burns. It could be because we have these activities. But I think it's a challenge for them to say, from festivals to whatever else, this is why you need to come now.
Yeah, yeah. And Kamal, just final point from you, which is, in terms of what, as I say, you're offering, the directions you're going in, can you see this being a long-term thing? It's not just a temporary thing because of people being much more aware of spirituality, if you like, and health and well-being because of what's been going on in the last couple of years, 2-3 years. Can you see this as being the long-term future? This is the way that tourism will go.
It is the way the tourism will go because I think people understood for 2 years how to be healthy. They want to spend more time. They want to be sustainable. They want to add value to destinations. They've changed. People have changed. The way they work, they have changed, I think, permanently. Some of them have changed permanently, and which is good for Asia, really. Because Asia, all of Asia, we have our deep culture. We have our own architecture, which was sustainable. Not only Sri Lanka, we have architecture, India, all the other countries too. The way we built things were sustainable long before those words were used. In Sri Lankan context, we had wellness in our history, our customs. It's the same for our other countries in Asia. So we lived with wellness. It was part of our life. So it's for us wonderful in a way that COVID has happened because it is our opportunity now to share whole of Asia and show the world Asia and say this is how we lived. And this is how we've survived with COVID also. We all used our own Ayurveda, I myself. We used, and most of us are vegetarian also. So the vegan, all this came into Europe late, hundreds of years later.
Yeah.
So we've been using it. So I think
so you can help save the planet as well while they're up there in Glasgow. The kind of things they're looking for,
what's
are
happening
pushing.
in Glasgow is fantastic. But from a Sri Lankan perspective, every Sri Lankan citizen, 21 million people, know climate change very well. We are an island. 50% of our population is living on the coastal area. They see climate change happening. Nobody's got to convince them. They are more than happy to embrace it.
Just final point to you, Liz, which is, I know, I mean, in terms of infrastructure building, being ready for tourism, that has absolutely been crucial. I know that, for example, you've had new airports open, used likewise. That's part of it. What about in terms of training, digitalization? Have you seen that develop, and is that ready for hopefully this new influx of tourism?
I think that, well, first of all, yes, the infrastructure has been evolving because there's been an interest in creating more connectivity to secondary, tertiary destinations, to add, access to those more remote locations. And that's in multiple countries across Asia Pacific. And so there's a readiness level in that. I just came, before PATA, I was working in ed tech, and I think that's exciting because that's a democratization of education, in travel and tourism, but also other industries. And that, helps evolve and upskill. Human capital development is such an important part of what travel delivers to countries and the livelihoods that can be brought up. One of the things, for example, one of the projects we have is with informal workers in Thailand. They are the hardest hit in the industry. It's the drivers, the vendors, the tour guides, and they're the lowest income and the most impacted. But through education, we can really help them. First of all, get health and safety briefings, learn how to market differently, tailor their products to domestic travel. So I think there's a lot of evolution that's happening across the region in terms of product and learnings and education that's important.
And I've got to say, as a final point, under your leadership, it's looking very promising.
Thank
so
you.
you just started, I know, but everyone's very impressed already.
Thank
so,
you.
and you've got a big job. So let's see. I think, unfortunately, we're out of time. So I'd really like to thank my panel for coming today. I think it's been really illuminating. Asia is going to be open for business big time in terms of tourism. And I wish you the best, and the rest of the countries the best. And thank you very much indeed for coming along. So please, ovation for Claire.
Thank you.